We're gonna move dinner till 7 o'clock, and we got Michael Calder and we have Summer Reese, and then we have Shane O'Sullivan, who's going to talk on either end of his film, RFK Must Die. So we're starting with Michael Calder. He's an independent researcher and investigator. He wrote a book, JFK versus CIA, and he's been doing extensive work in the Robert Kennedy police files recently, so he has some information to present about that. We'll have some questions with him. Summer's got updates on the file, Teeter's files, and the legal case, and then we'll have the film. So this is Michael Calder.
I'm going to be mercifully short. 5 minutes. I'm going to give you one theory. But you're the one who asked about the Secret Service agents. Yeah? I've been asking great JFK questions, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
House Select Committee, one of the charges was to find out who these men were. They knew from '64 there's fake Secret Service agents. This is one of the reasons we had the House Select Committee. They brought in a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Robert E. Jones, head of Army Intelligence, Southern Command, which means all of Latin America. He's being grilled in executive session. He tells them I had 8 to 12 Army intelligence officers assisting Kennedy in Dallas. Of course, one of those guys is arrested in the Texas School Book Depository, one of his Army intelligence agents, Powell. So then they ask him the big question. If your guys were approached and they were asked who they were, would they, what would they have said? Would they have said, Army intelligence? He said, no. We would have said that we were with Secret Service. So it's his guys who got the fake Secret Service IDs. They're assisting in the assassination. There's another group of Army intelligence agents at the back exit of the School Book Depository. Motorcycle cop goes around the back trying to catch a guy if he runs out the back. Comes across a group of men in suits standing there, heavily armed. He says, who are you? He goes, we're Secret Service. So he just says, fine, and he runs into the School Book Depository. So they got fake Secret Service agents right there. Of course, they're there to make sure the guy who's shooting from up top runs out the back. They're going to make sure nobody stops them. And they're at the grassy knoll because they're giving protection to the guys who are shooting from there. But it's Army intelligence, so it's not just CIA.
What about Treasury agents behind the knoll? In fact, the Treasury...
There's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco,
Yeah.
That's the Treasury agents.
Right.
I don't know if they're behind the knoll, but I know they're running into the School Book Depository. I've never seen any of their reports. So we know they're there because they're referenced, but I never saw any of those reports in those 26 volumes of hearings and exhibits.
Oh, they gave the committee the runaround. They said our records don't go back that far, and the head of Treasury at the time says, I can't remember where my men were that time. And some of the agents interviewed said they can't remember where they were that day.
Here's something of interest, because when my book came out, years ago, a lady who used to work in the CIA asked to see me through my brother, and went to North, and very beautiful woman, she married well, left. And I asked her about, if you're a CIA agent and you're doing stuff in the U.S., you can't flip out CIA identification. What kind of identification do you guys use stateside? And she looked at me like I just asked the dumbest question. And she said, Treasury.
Oh, yeah?
They use Bureau of Alcohol stuff. That's the ID for CIA agents back then when they're doing work stateside.
Huh.
So, it's got a big picture of George Bush.
Point here.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the CIA issues identification from a variety of agencies, including the Air Force, the various military branches, and so on, depending on what their cover happens to be.
That makes sense, huh?
Yeah, it would make sense.
Okay, so on RFK, got interested a couple years ago after I saw a play. I just went down to the Central Library, read a 1,500-page summary report, no names, just for intellectual exercise, right? They told me to go up to California State Archives. They had more material. I went up there, spent a week up there, read the transcripts of the trial, read the 1,500-page summary report again, this time with names, really better with names, listened to many of the tapes. When I listened to Vince DiPiero's tape, 4 a.m., and those tapes are great up there. You hear the noises, you hear people dropping stuff on desks, and the detectives are going, so what can you tell us about this? So when I heard Vince at 4 a.m. in his first interview describing in detail the polka dot dress girl with Sirhan at the tray stand, and I'm thinking, so she really does exist. I'm thinking, what else is LA not telling us? And I said, oh no, not again. You know, one conspiracy per life is enough. I did not want to go to a second one because it consumes you. But then I started thinking about Kennedy. You know, he's willing to get shot, then I ought to be willing to do a little bit of work. So between July and December, I read the complete LAPD investigation files. I wanted to really give you a really good address today, but William Pepper interviewed me yesterday, and what I wanted to tell you, he said, not now. He wants to use it at the trial, I guess. But let me give you something, well, not equally, but pretty good, okay? Right now it's just theory. And theory and $1 give me a cup of coffee. I have not proved this yet. $2. Yeah. Maybe the FBI files, which I have not read completely yet. I thought I had. I read 5,000 pages, but then Shane tells me there's 17,000 on disk. So I got to read those next. But here's what I got. I'm looking at the pantry. Sirhan's there, the polka dot dress girl's there, the professional gunman is there, probably a CIA team is there. They're not there by happenstance. So it has to be part of the plot. First thing J. Edgar Hoover asked his LA office, find out who's responsible for bringing Kennedy into the pantry. Because if there's a conspiracy, whoever decided that, who's ever in charge of that, is part of it. LAPD said the same thing. So I kept that in the back of my mind, right? So I'm looking at it, and they're there for a reason. So that means in a week or two before, this is how it's going to be. Kennedy's going to give a speech. He's going to be taken out into the pantry. He's going to be shot. That's how it's going to be. So I'm thinking, well, if I was CIA, what can I do to affect it, and what can I not do? What I can do is I can make sure that Sirhan's there, the girl's there, the shooter's there. I can pick the pantry. What I have no control over is Kennedy's movements. So I need someone to help me. So I need someone who's has a responsibility and the trust of Kennedy to move Kennedy around. I need that guy on my side. I need a Judas goat. I need someone on the inside of Kennedy's camp who's willing to betray him. So I'm thinking, well, who's in charge of the movements? And then I find out, well, the ones who are in charge of Kennedy's movements are the advance men, strictly the advance men. If Kennedy was going to give a speech here today, an advance man would have come in a week ago. He would have said, let's not park on Lincoln, let's park on the side, let's not go through the front, let's go through the side door, then we'll bring him down here. That's all the advance man's work, nobody else's work. Now, things almost got screwed up because on the 5th floor, men who are not on the advance team and who are not planning on bringing Kennedy into the pantry to die, they decide, hey, let's Kennedy gives a speech, we'll bring him downstairs, we'll talk to the overflow crowd, we'll go out to the car, hit the factory. That's what they're deciding, but these guys are on Kennedy's team. So they almost saved his life. But Kennedy comes down and gives a speech, so logically there has to be someone right where you guys are who's one of the advance men who has the power and the authority to change what these guys upstairs just said.
This way, Senator.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. I'm trying to figure out who said this way, Senator, because he's either one of them or he was told to say that. I'll get to that in 1 second. Remind me if I forget, all right? So someone's on the ground floor. Now, what's the guy who takes credit? Dudden? Fred Dudden loves to take credit. I made the decision and it was hot and the East Coast people got to get there. And of course, the East Coast is closed. Those reporters can't get anything out to the newspapers. But he says he made the decision, right? But from everything I've read, Fred Dudden and Barry, they're the guys who are responsible for bringing Kennedy from point A to point B in one piece. They're not the ones who decide where point A is and where point B is. That's the advance men who do that. So I'm thinking one of the advance men are down there, right? So I get my whole file of advancement, there's like 8 or 9 of them. I know at least one, probably 2 are traitors. I gotta figure out which one, right? So I'm reading all those LAPD files, and I come to a guy whose name I knew, Jerry Bruno. It says the advancement, and it says no interview. I'm thinking, wait, I just read 4,700 interviews, and they're not going to interview the head advancement, the man who's in charge of Kennedy's movements. I know he's in charge because they asked Stephen Smith, LAPD, and said, who's in charge of Kennedy's movements? He doesn't say Fred Dudden. He doesn't say Bill Barry's in charge. He says, what's his name's in charge, right? So I say, well, that's interesting. Let me go get the Jerry Bruno file from the JFK Presidential Library. So I type it up on the computer, and I find it. And everything Jerry Bruno's ever done his whole life for the Kennedys, going back to the 50s, is there. Except April, May, and June, 68. It's not there. That's the presidential campaign of Robert Kennedy. How can it not be there? Where is it? I call up, I ask for it. They call me back and say, we don't know where it is. They have no idea. I said, well, did you ever have it? I don't know. They don't know nothing, right? So now I'm doubly suspicious because his public papers of April, May, and June should be there, unless someone read them and said, hey, you know what? Somebody kind of smart can put 2 and 2 together and finger Jerry. Well, I go back about a month later, and now it says something else. It says, some in effect, all the Jerry Bruno papers are off limits for this at this time. So someone did not want me to see the Jerry Bruno things, and they're probably going through all the Jerry Bruno papers to see, you know, what did this guy say that he probably shouldn't have said. But so far, that's just a theory. Now, if Jerry Bruno in the advance man says, well, I was there, I really wanted to stay there, but they convinced me to go to New York, and I caught the 10 o'clock plane. Maybe he did or maybe he didn't. I'm supposed to believe it because he says he did? It seems to me it's too important to make sure Kennedy is taken back through the pantry that he probably is there. But nobody can tell me he's there. I got one girl who I tracked down, and she said he was there, and she was standing with him, and they listened to the speech, and as they were walking through the embassy room, Kennedy gets shot. When I tracked her down, she said, no, that was a different Jerry. Jerry Bruno got me in to the embassy room at 8 o'clock, but at 11 o'clock, that was a different Jerry, okay? But it's over the phone. I can't see if she's lying, if I'm talking to her. I don't know if she's telling the truth. Maybe she is, all right? But if Jerry Bruno is not there, he's got another advanced man who's running the show, whose responsibility is to deliver Kennedy into the kill zone. And I'm pretty certain Dudden did not make that decision on his own. I'm pretty certain, and I have not proved it yet, that while Kennedy's giving his speech, the advanced man or men are saying, holy shit, they just changed it. We can't shoot him. He's going to go down this way. He's going to go out to the car. Change it, flip it back. And they go to Jerry and to Bill, and they say, look, forget about it. Forget about going downstairs. You're seeing it on TV. Just take him back through the pantry, okay? That's where we get to hear. Now, if Dudden's so sharp and he's so much in command of everything, why does he not know Kennedy's going to go out the back door? He thinks they're going to go down here, or Barry thinks he's going to go there. He doesn't. He starts moving this way. Someone says, this way, Senator, and it's not Carl Euchre. Euchre has a big, thick German accent. It's got to be someone else. Maybe Eddie Manassian. But if Eddie Manassian, who's like a maitre d' there, or he's in charge of something else there. Catering, thanks. Someone's telling him, go get Kennedy and take him out the back. Now what that does is, it effectively takes away his bodyguards, because his bodyguards are here. He's there, he goes to the back. I've been trying really hard to find out who's backstage, because Manassian says, well, we went backstage and it was really dark, and the Kennedy staff people, and they talked for 30 seconds, and they told Bob, no, we can go this way. And Carl Euchre says pretty much the same thing. But I can't identify those people who are back there. I think it's Pierre Salinger, Mankiewicz, but I'm wondering if it's one of I'm wondering who else is back there. So that's just a theory right now, so keep in mind, everything I said, if you ever hear this guy's name. I think he's still alive. Here's the thing that kind of boggled my mind. Jerry Bruno was also the advance man on Kennedy's trip to Dallas. So we got the main advance man with the Kennedys since the 50s, completely trusted, And I'm highly suspicious that he's been the CIA's inside man all along. They had someone right next to both Kennedys. So keep in mind that about Jerry Bruno. The other stuff I'll tell you another time and you'll be shocked. Any questions on JFK? Because the famous Shane O'Sullivan wants his film up there.
When you say it was important to get it going, to go through the pantry, have you considered the possibility that there were assassination teams at every other entrance, or exit, I should say? Why does it have to be just we know from the John Kennedy assassination that there were other teams, had he lived through Dealey Plaza or something went wrong there, would he picked up somewhere else? If Sirhan was sick that day, I'm sure there was a second man that would have been with Patsy. I mean, they weren't gonna count on Sirhan being there for Kennedy. They obviously made a decision if he won the primary, he was getting killed.
Instead of going through all that, it's so much easier, just get him in New York. If this doesn't work, get him in New York, get him in Chicago, get him wherever. It's really hard to assassinate someone in such a professional manner. Once you start having 3 or 4 different ways and this and that,
Why?
well, because you need a fall guy. Sirhan can't be in 6 places at one
No,
time.
you have, I'm sure there were other people in the wings. I have 2 other guys, one's here, one's there, the 4th guy here, they're not limited.
Well, they worked on Sirhan for a long time.
Have you
And
considered this possible? I'm not
No.
saying that's what happened,
no,
but.
never.
Okay.
But I'll keep it in the back. I'll keep it in the back of mind because I don't know everything. But this is a very intricate assassination. You want to make sure this works.
Right, so you don't just count on one location.
Well, yeah.
But if Kennedy says, no, I'd rather go this way.
Get him in New York City when he's walking through a restaurant over there. You don't have to kill him that night. You just got to kill him before he's president.
Well, I think it was important to kill him that night once he won the primary.
Well, we'll see.
Protection might have increased.
Lisa.
With Jerry Bruno, were you able to meet any like family members, friends? Have you tried to see if you had money problems? You know, if there was something there, you know, was there a way for somebody, a reason for somebody to get to him, perhaps tax issues? I mean, seriously, that's how people get.
Well, if he's with trying to kill JFK on that in '63, I think he didn't really like the Kennedys as much as he might have professed.
Well, I feel the same about Walter Sheridan. I mean, I think they're, you know, I think any political candidate with power is gonna have people in their camp who are not there for the best interest. I'm just saying, if he was a loyalist, this would be a horrible smear. You have some provocative evidence. I was just wondering if you found any other.
I got one Jerry Bruno tape that I did order, and there's a lot of jealousy in him about Jack Kennedy and about Jack Kennedy treating him in a demeaning way. You know, so yeah.
There's this new book, JFK and the Unspeakable, Why He Died and Why It Matters by James Douglas. And I'm only on page 56, so I can't really speak about the book as a whole, but I'm profoundly moved by it. It's beautiful, and it's focusing on the reasons why President Kennedy was murdered that I've always thought were the real reasons, having to do not with casinos in Cuba, but with Bell Helicopter and McDonnell Douglas and petroleum companies and the billions that were made in Vietnam and the wars that followed. The goddamn question, oh yes, this is the question I wanted to ask you. I have thought several times of sending this book to Senator Obama. I just read Joe Trento's book from about 3 years ago called Prelude to Terror, where he talks all about how Jimmy Carter was set up by the Reagan people and Robert McFarlane and the Bush people, rather, to get knocked out of office by this Iran business.
Yeah.
Is there a way to communicate to Obama that what he must do is not only keep track of these people, but penetrate their organization and get ahead of them?
Let's see if Lisa Peace follows what I'm going to say.
I've worked on 2 presidential campaigns, and I can say no, not a chance in hell, because they are so busy. I mean, they get up at 4 and they go to bed at 2 a.m. You know, he will not read a book. He will not. His advisors will have time to read a book. I'm sorry. I was working directly with Howard Dean. I literally handed him my book, and I'm sure he didn't read it. You know, to this day, he probably hasn't read it because now he's head of the DNC.
You think
can
they
get to
appoint
them.
one person to keep the person alive?
Yeah.
Let me go out on a limb and look like a real fool in 6 months, okay? A real fool. I see these Manchurian candidates continue. Stearns is the first. The guy who's shooting George Wallace, he has the same 6 smile that Sirhan has. shooting John Lennon, and then going after Reagan. A guy named Fenton Bressler has a great book called "Who Shot John Lennon." I don't know if you knew it, but it really parallels a lot of MK Ultra stuff. Then Reagan. Is it unbelievable that David Rockefeller and the economic elite want Bush to be president, and he's not going to get it? You get Reagan's people say, "Hey, put him in vice president." Then you shoot him 3 months later, and George Bush becomes president. Is that unbelievable? Not to me. Not from what I know.
That's why Hillary can't be vice
That's
president.
what I was going to say. I was going to say that's what I'm putting on my list. The same people that I think who want Hillary.
The CIA is all over her campaign. They are so
Okay.
overtly, Larry
Yeah.
Johnson, yeah.
So
Any sense you get Cynthia McKinney.
yeah, that'd be great. If
What do you say?
if
Not any sense he'd get Cynthia McKinney as running mate.
if he picks Hillary and he gets shot 3 months after inauguration, remember I said it, okay?
It's not good.
Yeah, but okay, that's all I have to say. Any more questions or yeah? Yeah.
I spoke to Paul Frey just a little earlier. I don't know if he's, oh, excuse me. I don't know if he's still in here. If I understood, I asked him about how it was decided they go out through the pantry. And if I understood him correctly, I thought he said Mankiewicz, and I forget the name of the other guy. Mankiewicz, and the other guy, some other guy, made the decision. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm in contact with Mankiewicz. I asked him because I need to find out who those people are in the back.
Yeah.
He wrote to me and I can't remember what he said, but it wasn't that though. It was he said only 2 people are going to make that decision, him or maybe Fred Dutton, and he didn't make the decision.
And
Okay.
I thought maybe it was Fred Dutton was the other guy who. Have you talked to Fred Dutton then?
Fred, he's died, and I tried contacting his kids, and they won't give me time of day.
Oh,
But remember, Fred's a soldier. He's not one of the advancement. He's the guy. He's the guy who's going to be out there with Kennedy and walk him in. Someone like me, if I'm the advancement, I'm going to say, walk him in, and this is where he's going to give the speech.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well.
Lisa.
Wait, I was just gonna say, I did read somewhere that it was Bobby himself who chose to go speak to the print press because the TV and the radio people had all the glory, filming him, and they were kind of off and shut it, and that he had done that at other events. So I don't know, but I did also read the Fred Dutton thing. I personally found that persuasive, but I'm very curious about your evidence. So, it's like I said.
Well, here's the problem, Lisa. You can't leave it to chance. This guy's got to be killed in a pantry. What are you going to do? Set it all up and then let's find out what happens? No.
Well,
So it has to come off. So Fred Dutton, you can't rely on Fred Dutton to come up with a genius idea.
well, no, what I'm saying is that Bobby had planned all along to go talk to the press. That was not changed. After that, he was going to go downstairs, speak to the overflow, and then head to the party.
That's why we need to talk to the advancement, all including Jeff Greenfield, and find out. Here's the key. What was decided on June 3rd on what Bobby was going to do on June 4th? If you tell me what happened on June 3rd and who made up what Kennedy's going to do on June 4th, and if it's going back into the pantry, that's our guy. It's
Right.
not-
Ed Guthman lives locally. Have you ever talked to him? Because he was there with him that night, and he was in the inner circle.
I didn't, but I want to talk to I'm going to try to put some pressure on Paul to get me Lester, because Lester's younger. Lester was their son.
And Lester might remember more.
Yeah. And you know how kids see everything when they're young,
Yeah, well, I have Guthman's contact info if you
All
need
right,
it.
you better email me. Oh, Summer, where's
Does anyone have more questions?
I was gonna say, you should probably remember though, that I think it probably was Bobby's idea to go talk to the press, but he didn't need to go through the pantry to get to the press.
Actually, that's not true. There's only 2 ways there, and one, because I've been there, I've walked the thing, and I've seen the maps. He either had to go through the really big crowd to get there, or he had to go through the kitchen and go around and still hit the big crowd to get to, or he could go through the pantry. So it actually did make sense to go through the pantry. It would have looked like the safest route, not knowing.
And Lisa, were you in the
Yeah.
were you in the pantry before it got destroyed?
Yes, I was, and not long before it was destroyed.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it impossible for this man to look at me, and he's Juan Romero, and he not see the guy shoot Kennedy? Isn't that not impossible? This is how far they were.
You know what I'm going to answer to that is there's a video on YouTube, and I gotta find it and post. I'll give it to John to post. And what it does is it shows 2 teams playing basketball. It says count the number of passes from the white team you know, between the white team members. And you're watching. At the end of the video, it doesn't ask you how many passes there were. It says, did you see the man in the gorilla suit walk through the game? And you're like, what? And then I watched it again, and it's very obvious. There's a man in a gorilla suit who walks right through.
That's a nice intellectual exercise.
No, but what I'm saying is that if you're focused on one thing, something else really big could be happening right next to you. You will not see it. Juan Romero was so enamored of Bobby Kennedy. When he saw him, that was his sole focus. I mean, the world could have been falling off a cliff behind him, and he wouldn't have seen it. That's all I'm saying.
But right now, I see the guy to your left, and I see a girl in a black dress.
Right, that's because
But I'm
you're not
looking at you.
focused on me. No,
No, I am focused on you. I am focused on you. I'm just saying, I was there, and I'm saying impossible for these 3 people not to see the shooter, impossible for the 4
No.
people not to see the shooter.
if
They were doing it yesterday, you know, and if
Stand in for a
I'm
second,
back
hold on.
here
Yeah, I was
and
just-
holding like this, and I take the gun like this, anybody see me shooting
Yeah,
him? That's what they
exactly.
were saying.
If you're talking,
He's
and
over
if
here.
he's here and I'm here, and I don't know if Caesar was left-handed or right-handed, to be honest, but if he's here, you're talking to this guy.
This guy
Now
sees you
remember-
right there.
Hold on.
This guy-
You're Juan Romero, you're a little far, but you're Juan Romero,
He's
hold
Juan
on.
Romero.
No, hold on. This is Bobby Kennedy, you're Juan Romero, you're actually right about here. All right, but he turns away from you and he starts to move. I'm literally here, you can't see me, I can't see you right now. This is where it happens, right after Kennedy turned sideways to Juan, so he wouldn't have seen it. That's all I'm saying. He had shook his hand, he turned to move forward, he had his side to Juan Romero, and this side was hidden from Juan. By the way, Juan was the only guy who said he saw the shooter, and he wouldn't identify it as Sirhan. Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Yeah.
Proves your point. Thank you. See how much fun you can have reenacting these scenes. I think his point about the advance stuff is important. The advance arrangements for the Kennedy assassination came from Bill Moyers, calling, at least part of them, calling the Saul Bloom Agency, and Jack Peterbaugh and Elizabeth Forsling in those days, Elizabeth Forsling Harris later. And they were in meetings with Secret Service and FBI prior to what appears to be a private oil club, probably Connolly's is what we suspect, where the decisions are made about the bubble top, or the decisions are made about changing the route of the motorcade 48 hours before. You know, years ago I went to Dulles Airport. I lived in D.C. and out in Virginia. It's not far from me. It's all our airports are named after horrible people, except D.C. National. Locals refuse to call it Reagan. But the Dulles Airport had an exhibit about what can they see from a satellite. And actually it was a false exhibit because they can see a golf ball, they can read a license plate, they can look at your facial features from a satellite. I mean, a lot of people don't understand, and I talked to some of the people involved in developing, the Hubble telescope was not primarily designed to see outer space. It was only the one was turned to outer space, and they had to go up and readjust it. All the others were pointed back to the Earth, okay, on the Hubbles. So what can see galaxies is pointed back at you. What do you think they can see? But this had grainy photographs of cities and buildings, you know, what they can see. And then they had a mock-up of the U-2, and they were talking about when they took the pictures and then the Blackbird and the U-2. And then in the U-2 exhibit, they had photographs from the Cuban Missile Crisis that were taken by the U-2 and that led to them knowing that the missiles had come there. Well, I'm looking at this, and this is an actual glossy photograph of one of the ones that led to the decision, and typed on the bottom is, only this crowd will get it, courtesy of Jagger Charles Stovall. Courtesy of Jagger Charles Stovall, where Oswald worked at that time. And Oswald was their photo expert, and where did Oswald go and subcontract to do the photographic work because they didn't have as good cameras as the other place? He went to Saul Bloom Agency, where Jack Peterbaugh and Elizabeth Forsling Harris worked. Okay, and he had enough clearance. These were the photos that were being processed there, and then their photo analysis is being sent to the NSA. Okay, and the NRO, whose initials were secret back then. All right, but that's part of an advanced team. When you talk about an advanced team, I mean, they make decisions. On the other hand, I think that Mike's point is good, that you don't leave it to chance, and you have Team A and Team B. And one example of that, I mean, we know about the multiple attempts in Miami and Chicago and other things, but one example of that is in the Reagan shooting, which I worked on. Most people didn't work in great detail on that one, but I found it interesting. There was a second Hinckley, a guy named Richardson. He was programmed by the same psychiatrist named Rappaport in Evergreen, Colorado. He came to New Haven. He stayed in the same hotel where Hinckley had stayed a week before. He wrote his own love letters to Jodie Foster. After the shooting attempt, he said, "I'm going down to finish the job." And then he was arrested for having a gun in his luggage in the New York Port Authority bus station. Anyone been to the New York Port Authority bus station? Thousands of people. Do they have a metal detector anywhere? How can they figure out you got a damn gun in your bag unless they say, watch for this Clockwork Orange and grab him when he gets off the bus? He's coming on this bus, and okay, that's how they get him. And then they arrest him and they put him in a mental institute. I think he was just recently released. And then he brags about his connection, like how he liked Charlie Manson and he likes the SLA and all of these earlier operations. And he worked prior to that in Cape May for Carl McIntyre, World Council of Christian Churches, who's named in the Torbett document as one of the people connected to the Kennedy assassination. So, but I'm just giving you an example that they would have, if they didn't go to the pantry, my guess is that they would have had a team B on the other direction with a second patsy that was ready to get them as well. But the advance is doing, I would think, both ends. So just thought about it. But why leave it to chance is right, and you got to get it right, but you can also have, I mean, Thomas Arthur Valley, the guy that was arrested and picked up by Abram Bolden in Chicago, well, first by Daniel Groth, who's an agent that's with COINTELPRO, but Abram Bolden got involved in looking into the Chicago case. Thomas Arthur Valley had ID, driver license, in the name Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, so they had Lee Harvey Oswald in Chicago. Okay, that was ready to take the blame if need be. So.